Your best clients aren't scrolling. They're not clicking webinar links, and they're definitely not waiting for your next 3-day live event, because high intent, high ticket buyers, the ones who are making the fast decisions and know exactly what they want, value one thing more than anything else: time. And that's exactly why your current marketing is working against you. Those webinars, funnels, and live events all require your buyer to stop their life and step into your process. So even if your offer is brilliant, your system slows down the people who would end up buying from you from the fastest. But a podcast, on the other hand, it moves with your buyer on a drive, on a walk, during school pickup lines, doing dishes, all the things that they're doing while they're living their life. And when your content is built to be binged, you don't just earn their attention, you create trust, authority, resonance, and readiness at the exact speed that those high intent buyers want to make decisions. That's why studies have shown that audio content is creating 2 times more recall than written content, and listeners who are binging podcast content are 5 times more likely to take action than those attending a webinar. Because you're not just delivering information, you're compressing months of nurturing into hours of binging. And you don't need a huge podcast to bring in high ticket sales. You just need a podcast that's designed for binging and buying. Because when you build it right, a podcast can end up replacing your entire marketing system in as little as 30 days, so that you can convert high ticket buyers faster than any webinar, funnel, or launch you've ever run. So whether you've been podcasting for years or you've never hit record today, I'm showing you how to build a binge and buy podcast system that works 24/7 and replaces your entire marketing stack in just 30 days. Now, hey, and welcome back to the Business Real Talk, where we break down how to turn your expertise into an IP asset that sells itself. And I show you the real world strategies of how to make it work inside of your marketing, your sales, and operations, so you can shorten sales cycles, attract premium clients, and scale your business without exhausting funnels or endless follow-up. I am Naza Chaveria, a consultant, founder of the EasyS Method, and the leading growth innovation strategist for service experts and companies. So let's dive in. Now, last week, we dug into why long sales cycles aren't about your buyer needing time. It's about your process actually slowing them down. And we talked about how mirror decision making and how that allows you to target high intent buyers and separate from teaching and deciding, and how you sequence beliefs and collapse your sales cycles from months into days. Now, knowing how decisions are made is only one half of the equation, because the real question is, how do you deliver that decision making environment consistently at scale and without burning yourself out or exhausting your buyers with endless live events, webinars, or complicated funnels? That is what we are here to solve today. Because if you want a marketing and sales system that works for high ticket buyers in 2025 and beyond, you need something that aligns with their psychology. It respects their time and it lets them make decisions naturally. So we're going to talk about how we can apply the decision psychology inside a low lift, high conversion binge and buy podcast engine that's going to be working 24/7, bringing you your best buyers straight to you, primed and ready to invest in as little as 30 days. So let's get real. You didn't build a successful business just to become a prisoner to your marketing. What you actually want is fast moving, high ticket buyers who are ready to invest, not those tire kickers. And you want a simple and reliable low lift system that isn't going to drain you, one that consistently drives sales while you can focus on serving clients or running the business or simply living your life, not performing for the algorithms. And one that makes it an easy yes. No long sales cycles or months of handholding, nurturing, or follow-up. And you want all of this without burning yourself out, creating a mountain of content, being everywhere all the time, or relying on complicated funnels that just feel like a second full-time job trying to stay visible. Now, here's what's actually probably happening in your life. You're managing 5 different marketing systems just trying to stay visible, and it's exhausting. There's Instagram posts, LinkedIn articles, webinar prep, email sequences, paid ads. Every platform has its own demands that are changing monthly. And after all that effort, you're watching your sales cycles stretch longer and longer, even though you know people want what you offer. They're interested, they're engaged, they're just not buying. And you're attracting browsers instead of buyers, those people who consume your content, but they don't end up moving, or worse, they stay in your pipeline for months, draining yours and your team's energy with endless follow-ups while never actually committing. Now, webinars, launches, and funnels that once used to work are showing the decline in performance. You're feeling a little heavier. They require more effort and they're producing fewer qualified buyers. So what used to feel exciting now just feels exhausting. And the reality is, you know that your work delivers world-class results. You know that your clients win. You know the problem isn't your offer, but something isn't connecting. And you're not quite able to put your finger on what's broken in the way that people understand, evaluate, and commit to your work. So when experts see that their conversions are dropping and their workload is increasing, they do what they've been told to do. They double down on the strategies that should work. So the first one is building another webinar or launch funnel. So the advice sounds really solid that you need to get people on a live event, teach your framework, prove your value, and then pitch at the end when they're the most engaged. Now, the problem is these high production, exhausting, and honestly really slow. So for you, you're prepping slides, you're rehearsing, you're promoting the event, you're showing up live, and then you're following up with everyone who attended but didn't end up buying. So it's a massive time investment for every launch cycle. And if you want consistent leads, you have to be running these constantly. Now, for your buyers, they have to stop their lives to try and attend. So your best buyers don't want to sit through a 90-minute or 3 days of training to try and figure out if you're the solution. I want you to think about it this way. When was the last time you actually signed up or sat through someone's 90-minute webinar? Or when was the last time you completed a 4-day challenge? If you're honest, probably never. And you're a motivated business owner who's actively looking at solutions. So I want you to think to yourself, why would your busy, high-ticket buyers, the ones that are running businesses, have a career, are managing teams, raising families, be any different? They won't. They can't. That's why what webinars do to high-intent buyers, they force them to stop their life and sit through a pitch process when they were already ready to move. Now, the second solution that we see is that you need to create more content everywhere. The logic is that if you just show up more on Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, eventually you'll end up catching the right people and they'll end up converting. And sure, visibility matters, but here's the problem. More content doesn't equal more conversions. It equals more noise. So your high intent buyers aren't scrolling social media looking for inspiration or motivation. They're out there living their lives. So they need a solution that's going to fit inside of their lives, not one that demands them to stop everything to try and consume it. And here's what's crazy. Right now, you're probably creating 15 to 20 pieces of content per week, but your buyer is only catching fragments, a post here, an email there, and they're trying to kind of piece those things together and create a decision from scattered breadcrumbs. And the reality is that's not a path to a decision. It's a recipe for confusion. So the third solution is to build trust slowly with multiple touch points and a low ticket offer. See, the advice is that a high ticket buyer needs time. So you start them with a $27 tripwire or a mini course to try and build trust. Then you nurture them with 10 to 20 touch points, those emails, case studies, testimonials, slowly ascend them up your value ladder until they're ready for the premium investment. Now, the logic is that if you create small commitments, that it'll build big trust and that more exposure equals more confidence. And eventually that will create high ticket sales. Now, here's what actually happens. You end up attracting more bargain hunters, not the premium buyers. So the people who say yes to your $27 offer are often not the same people who will invest in $5,000 offers. And your high ticket, high intent buyers might end up buying your $27 offer, but only for it to collect dust in their email because they were too busy to go through it. You've accidentally trained your market that you're not the expert they go to when they want a real transformation. So you end up working harder than ever, but the payoff just isn't there. So I'm going to hold your hand when I say this. The reason why those tactics have failed isn't you. It's that all of your marketing has been engineered for your worst buyers, not your best buyers. So it fights against the way that fast moving and high ticket decision makers actually make choices, slowing down the exact people who are ready to buy, the people that you want, because you've built a system that rewards hesitation and punishes speed. That's why the answer isn't more tactics designed for tire kickers. The answer is a high ticket sales engine that's built for your best buyers, one that lets them binge their way to a yes while actually living their life. I call this the Binge Buy System. Now, it works because it solves the three biggest gaps that every other marketing system leaves wide open. The first is that it's designed for your best buyers and not your worst. So no more slowing down the people who are actually ready to invest. The second is that it's a simple, low lift and always on. So it's going to replace your exhausting webinars, your launches, your endless follow-up with a system that's going to run while you focus on building your business. And it's built for binge psychology. See, buyers are going to move through your content naturally, compounding trust, authority, and clarity. So they're going to arrive at a yes faster without having to stop their lives. So how does this actually work? Now, the binge and buy system is built on two core principles. The first one is what I call micro ecosystems. Now, most experts accidentally create content chaos, this idea of dozen disconnected touch points that never actually add up to a decision. So I want you to think about the fact that scattered content is going to create scattered decisions. So when your buyer has to piece together your methodology from a post here, an email there, a webinar next month, their brain is working overtime trying to connect dots that aren't already connected. That's why a podcast doesn't become a sales engine because you're showing up consistently. It becomes a sales engine because of how the ecosystem is engineered. Every episode inside of the binge and buy system is its own micro ecosystem. So it's designed around a single buying trigger. That means that every episode is built around one specific desire, frustration, decision point that your ideal high ticket buyer is actively wrestling with. One episode becomes the new version of an entire funnel. So instead of dragging buyers through 10 emails or 20 touch points, a webinar, and a follow-up sequence, you're going to give them a complete decision environment in one 20-minute listening experience. So everything you publish that week, whether that's emails, social media, stories, articles, they're all going to point back to that one episode ecosystem. So instead of scattering their attention across 15 disconnected pieces of content, you're going to focus it. You're going to create a predictable path for buyers to enter and progress. So I want you to think about it this way. When was the last time you had a serious conversation, but you kept getting interrupted every 30 seconds with a text, a phone call, your kids asking for a snack? Are you absorbing what people were saying when you were having that conversation, or were you just kind of nodding along while mentally juggling 5 other things? That's what scattered content does to your buyers. They're not ignoring you. They're just cognitively overwhelmed trying to track these multiple pieces at once. So when your buyer has to piece together your methodology from a post on Instagram, an email 2 weeks later, and then they need to remember to attend a webinar a month later that's going to put all those pieces together, their brain is working overtime trying to connect the dots that aren't connected. And that doesn't make sense, because why are we asking our buyers to do the work of unpaid assembly work, right? Undoubtedly sending them on this wild goose chase that only makes it harder for them to decide. Micro ecosystems eliminate the interruptions. It creates one clear pathway, one focused decision. So it works because of something that is called cognitive coherence. When information flows as one unified concept, the brain actually processes it 3 times faster than when it has to try and stitch together fragments from different sources. So it's going to create a hyper fixated pathway without any distractions, because when you give someone a complete thought start to finish in one sitting, their brain doesn't have to work to try and connect the dots. The dots are already connected for them. Now, your buyer is now going to enter into a self-contained path where their clarity is going to build quickly, the trust is going to be accelerated, and authority is felt instantly without you showing up live, performing, or pushing. So I want you to see what this looks like in practice. The old way was that you had on Monday an Instagram post about mindset, Tuesday was a blog about systems, Wednesday was an email with a case study, Friday was a LinkedIn article about your process, and next week you have webinar invites that are explaining your framework. 2 weeks later, follow-up sequence, right? Your buyer is mentally filing all of those different things into different folders, trying to figure out how they connect. And newsflash, your high-intent, high-ticket buyers, they don't want to work hard just to have to figure out to buy from you. So a micro ecosystem instead is one episode. So how to get your husband to buy gifts without asking. That week's email is going to point to that episode. That week's social posts are going to tease insights from that episode. Everything drives to one focused conversation about one decision point. Less effort, exponentially more clarity. So your buyer is actually moving through the process without you having to create all these new things. And the best part about it was you're no longer having to juggle all this different marketing. You have one micro ecosystem that's built around your episodes. Now, I had a client who rebuilt her podcast this way. She went from putting out 4 valuable but really scattered episodes a month that had hundreds of downloads but no leads. And what we did is we rebuilt them into what I call weekly micro ecosystems. So people started applying, saying things like, I binged 1 episode and I finally understand why your approach is the only one that makes sense. sense because one episode equals one decision equals one yes. Now, the best part about this is that this system doesn't just help your clients, it's going to lighten your load. So instead of juggling 18 forms of content or a bunch of different marketing things that you're doing, you're going to operate one streamlined, strategic, and weekly rhythm that's going to compound results while reducing your workload. So I want you to ask yourself this right now: are your marketing efforts scattering attention across disconnected pieces? Or are you actually guiding buyers through a single clear path that actually leads to a decision? So the next piece of the puzzle is what I call bingeable decision psychology. Now, buying decisions don't happen because you're teaching more. They happen because you sequence the right ideas in the right order. So here's where most podcasts completely miss the mark. They're built around topics and not decisions. So an episode about mindset and an episode about strategy, an episode about tactics, they're entertaining and they're informative, but they're not actually driving decisions. So you're not just covering a topic inside of your episodes. You're strategically going to guide people through one step of their decision process. So each episode is designed to deliver one core belief shift, one clear lens for understanding their problem, one instantly graspable piece of your methodology, and one logical next step in their decision-making process. So I want you to picture it this way. Right now, if you were trying to follow a recipe where all the steps were on separate pages and in random order, would that make your cooking easier or harder? See, the brain works the same way with decisions. Sequence is going to matter more than volume. This is why the Binge and Buy system is the only one of its kind, because every episode is built using bingeable decision psychology. It means each episode is internally structured around how the brain naturally moves through a buying decision. I want you to think of it like most podcast episodes are kind of like a maze. There's a lot of information and it's great information, but it's thrown at you in whatever order feels good. So the listener might feel entertained and maybe they learn something and they grab one piece of information, but they're not any closer to making a buyer decision because there's no clear path. Now, a bingeable decision psychology structures each episode like a treasure map. There's a clear starting point, a clear destination, and every step builds on the last, and it points to the next piece. So let me help you put the pieces together. We have our micro ecosystems, and those are kind of like IKEA, right? They put everything you need for a bedroom in one showroom. You can find the bed, the nightstands, the lamp, everything's in one place. So you're not running to 5 different stores. That is your micro ecosystems. Now, bingeable decision psychology is like the strategic path that they design through that showroom, the arrows on the floor that guide you through the exact order, the way that they know that, hey, if I pick a lamp, then I'm going to look for a table, then I'm going to do these. They're all logically set up for the next step so that you end up walking through the store, buying more and understanding exactly what you need because of the way everything works together. So in the Binge and Buy system, when someone listens to just one episode, they move forward in their decision-making process. They're gaining clarity on one specific piece. Now, the magic happens when you actually allow them to binge multiple episodes where they're all built the same way. So now clarity doesn't just add up, it starts to compound. That first episode is installing a belief. The second episode builds on that belief and adds on the next layer. Episode 3 stacks on top of both. And by episode 4, they're not just informed, they're clear, they're decided. Okay? Because you're not piling on random information in a random order, you're stacking decision-making momentum. That is what we call processing fluency at work. The brain is going to move faster when information is moving and flowing in a smooth and sequential process without interruption. So I want you to think about it this way. When was the last time you tried to learn something new from YouTube? Did you understand it better from 10 random 2-minute clips that you put together, or from one comprehensive tutorial that walked you through every single piece of the puzzle? That uninterrupted flow is exactly what binging creates. And when you combine it with strategic sequencing, you create episodes that don't just get listened to, they get binged. And binge content creates fast, confident buyers. So each episode is following a specific and proven structure that we built around bingeable decisions that allows you to create a process that's actually driving conversions. Each episode becomes a high-powered conversion system because it's taking them through the decision sequence. A great example of this is my client, Kelly. She restructured her content using the bingeable decision psychology. So each piece, whether it was a video or an email, it was all built around one belief shift that actually sequenced naturally inside of that one singular piece. So her prospects went from taking 90 days wandering through this maze of scattered information to 7 days because they were following this clear process. They would binge your content, book a call, show up already sold saying, I know I want to work with you. Where do we start? This is why someone can actually end up binging just 2 to 4 episodes, email you and say, I don't need anything else. I'm ready to go. You're not convincing them. You're engineering momentum and decisions for them. And the more they binge, the faster that happens. That is the power of a decision path. Not more information, but the right information in the right order to let your buyers binge and buy. This is the power of the Binge and Buy system. You're not just publishing a podcast, you're actually creating a high ticket sales engine that works with the way your best buyers actually make decisions. So each episode creates your own micro ecosystem, giving your buyers that clarity, authority, and trust in a single focused experience, replacing all of those funnels and webinars. And each episode now builds upon the last. So you create that compounding momentum. And don't forget, inside of the episodes itself, they're structured around bingeable decision psychology, which means it's not just random content thrown together. That content inside of that episode is actually built around mirroring their decisions. It's built to help support them make the fastest and easiest decision possible. This is what it takes to create an ecosystem, to create a binge and buy engine that leverages the easiest and best way to target high intent, high ticket buyers in 2025 and beyond, because you are creating a system that supports their most valued asset, time, and it's going to simplify your marketing as well. I want you to think about the fact that at this point, you can replace having webinars, having content on multiple platforms, a podcast here, an article here, and now you have it all inside of a self-contained micro ecosystem. That is the power behind a binge and buy engine, is you're actually producing something that takes a micro ecosystem, eliminating all that back and forth with your clients and creating a streamlined approach to your marketing so you can cut down the effort you're putting in and see better results, but also layering that with the strategy and psychology and philosophy within each of those episodes so it actually drives conversions. No more putting random stuff out there and hoping that that creates the conversions you want. You are manufacturing and engineering conversions inside of your business with a low lift system. It means that you're going to be supporting your best buyers, respecting their time, guiding them to a decision while you're building trust, authority, and clarity with every single episode. That is the foundation of the Binge and Buy system, and it's what makes your podcast more than just content. It's a decision-making engine. Now, here's the thing. You can have all of these pieces put together, but the reality is the baseline of what makes all of these things work is understanding the foundational elements of how you actually create an IP asset that does that selling for you. That is where my EasyS method comes in. It's the framework that takes all of your innovative thinking, your expertise, the work you do with your clients, and it turns it into an IP asset that is a self-driving client acquisition system. So it's built around 3 core pillars. The first one being winning the market. Now, your best clients are not out there trying to compare one from the other. They're looking for the best breakthrough option that makes them stop and say, oh my gosh, this is it. This is exactly what I've been looking for. That is what innovation gap methodology does. It is actually identifying where the innovation gaps in the market are, but where your category defining theory is, that thing that makes it where you become the only and incomparable option. That means now you're able to charge 5 to 10 times more than you were previously. You have created demand that comes to you because you have created your own blue ocean. Now, the second step, once you have that IP asset in hand, now we can turn that into a bingeable decision system. So think about how Netflix, they're not hoping that you watch the next episode. They're designing every episode to pull you in. Exactly what we talked about here today. So a bingeable decision system does the same thing for your buyers. They're moving through it like they're binging a show, but they're selling themselves at every step. There's no chasing, no drawn out, let me think about it, just a system that turns interest into an inevitable yes. Now, the third and final piece is that your clients need to become your raving fans, because marketing alone does not build a business. Clients do. And a happy client machine is ensuring that your clients succeed at scale without everything falling back on you. They get world-class results and they become your best salespeople, bringing in more high-ticket, high-intent buyers effortlessly. That is the EasyS method. It aligns your innovation, your systems, and your strategy so that you dominate your market, attract premium clients on autopilot, and scale predictably. So if you have seen enough and you want to see how this can work inside of your business, the next step is to apply for a growth optimization call. You can head on over to easyesleads.com/call. On this call, you and I are going to sit down. We're going to look at where your innovation opportunities are, how we can turn your expertise into a self-selling IP asset and create create a masterpiece bingeable system that gets your buyers to sell themselves. So if you want to go book your call right now and apply for that, it's at easyesleads.com/call. Now, if you want to dive a little bit deeper into how we developed the Netflix effect and how it actually works to get your leads to sell themselves, I want to invite you to check out our free bingeable on-demand series right now by heading on over to thenetflixeffect.com. Now, I hope that you're walking away from this episode thinking differently, that you understand the power behind having a micro ecosystem that takes on the heavy lifting and reduces the work that you have to do in marketing by allowing you to create a self-contained pathway for your buyers. And that we also understand the power behind creating bingeable decision psychology inside of those episodes themselves. So we're not only creating the ecosystem that supports your marketing and supports your buyers, but also creating the logic, the philosophy, the strategy behind each of those episodes so they're actually structured for conversions. Now, if you've been able to see and think a little bit differently, I would love and appreciate if you could take 60 seconds to rate, review, or share this episode with a friend so we can support others in learning how to develop an IP asset that gets your leads to sell themselves. Now, until next time, here's to keeping it real.